Now let's have a look at the organizational modeling in our ARIS, in our architecture model. So first, the organizational modeling is located, can be found in the top of the ARIS model. As a quick reminder, the structural organization refers to the static system within the organization. So all the departments, all the organizational units are mapped to the structural organizational. And why is this structural organization important? Somebody has to execute the processes. Somebody has to fulfill the activities, to perform the activities. Somebody has to do the processes in the organization, and therefore we also need to model these departments, these persons, these job descriptions who are responsible for the operation of the processes. They are responsible for the processes. And therefore we have a modeling approach. We use the organization chart, and in this organization chart we have different means to name, to mention all these different parts in a structural organization. In the organizational chart, we can use a kind of hierarchical structure. Hierarchical structure, how they can be found in organizations, like you have a manager and you have employees who are subordinated to the manager. And then you see here different modeling constructs. So on a quite higher level, there are areas in the organization where you, for example, describe a certain department, like the sales department, or you describe an organizational area regarding the type. So a department could be a special type of organizational area. And then with these organizational areas, you can structure your entire organization. Like you have the company XY, and then department X, department Y, department Z. And then within these departments, you might even have again some groups which are responsible for special types of activities, special types of work, special functions maybe also in the software. And then at some point you will come up with some special job position. So you would name somebody, and you would name his or her position in the organization. And then you would describe it with a so-called job position. That's a modeling construct in the organization chart, and this describes that some person, some human person, actually takes this job position to fulfill a certain function, to have a certain responsibility. And then you can also have in a more generic type the type of a job position. There you use this dashed line here, and you could then, the type of the job position, you have this dashed line here, and you could then describe the so-called type of this job. So you don't name it specifically like head of sales. You just say the head of the department, and this corresponds with this type here, type of the organizational area. So you might have a head of the department in a generic department. And then if you can name a special person, one particular person who is responsible for this job position, then you would write it like here in a rectangle. you would write the name in the rectangle, and then this means that you have this particular person who is responsible for executing this position, for executing their responsibilities in the job position. And with these modeling constructs, you can now set up an organization chart, and you could model the entire organization regarding their structural organization. So you would refer to a kind of static system in the organization, static system which at some points is responsible for executing processes. Here you see an example of the organizational model for the production part of a company. So you see that here it is the production department. So only the process, only the people for producing something for the production, only the people who are responsible in the production department are mentioned here. People and the organizational areas. And on the top of the chart, we find the management of the production department. So there is a certain job position, head of production, and here we see the head of production global is meant. So it's not only a local production unit, it's the head of the global production. And for this particular position, we have the name Anne Schulz. We have a concrete person which is responsible for heading the global production. It is Anne Schulz. And then we have a production coordinator as a second position here. Production coordinator maybe is some employee of the head of the production. And in this case, Frank Gruber is our concrete person who is the production coordinator. So maybe the operational things regarding the production are in the responsibilities of Frank Gruber. And then in parallel, we have a sales forecast position. Why is sales forecast, global sales forecast, why is that important? No, because you would align your production capacities, align your production forecast also with your sales forecast. So you would produce the amount of products which you expect to sell in the quarter or in the next year. And again, for the sales forecast, we have a concrete person. We have Lieschen Müller, who is responsible for the sales forecast. And then below, we have three different departments. We have first the production in Europe, then the production in Asia, and then the production in America. So maybe it's a production company producing cars or similar kind of vehicles, and you would produce the cars probably in the markets, in factories which are located in the markets, like in Europe, like in Asia, or in the Americas. And let's have a look at Europe. In the European production department, there we have maybe a location in Zwickau, a location in Paris, and a location in Warsaw, and obviously three different departments which are subordinated to the production department in Europe. And maybe in this case you also have a central coordination of the production for the European markets, for the European production locations. So you would have this centralized production coordination job description. And in this case here, you do not assign a concrete person to that, maybe because of the complexity of the model, or maybe you decide to not model in such a concrete way here. So you just write down the production coordination job description, and this leads, so to say, the coordination of the different locations, Zwickau, Paris, and Warsaw. And below each department, production location in Zwickau, Paris, or Warsaw, you have concrete production management related positions, like the production manager here in Zwickau, who oversees all the production issues located in Zwickau. And then you have maybe a shift lead 1, shift lead 2, and maybe other shift leads as substitutes if it's required. And here in this case, regarding these positions, you have concrete names again. So Gunther Friedmann is assigned to the position of the production manager. Lutz Heber is assigned to the shift lead here, and Hanna Lehmann is also assigned to this shift lead position. The same might be the case here in Paris. In Paris you have concrete positions, production manager in Paris, shift lead 1 and shift lead 2, and maybe you also have concrete names, but it doesn't matter. You see that you can assign concrete names, and you might also neglect them. In Warsaw it's the same. You have production manager, you have a shift lead 1 and 2. So here in this example, you can see how you can arrange these modeling constructs to describe the organization, to describe the hierarchy, which should be implemented, which really should be set up within your organization. And you can see what the organizational hierarchies and reporting structures are. And then with your organizational modeling, you can also depict what kind of organization you have. So first might be that you have a function-oriented organization. That's what you can see here in the upper part. And function-oriented means that you have certain functions which can be found in different departments, like functions for sales, functions for the product development, functions for the procurement. So you would take care about your material. You have to buy the material which is required for your production. Then functions for all the production, and function for the accounting and logistics finally. So in logistics, for example, the people or the subordinate organizational areas take care only for the logistics within the company. And above all, you have the managing director, and the managing director is responsible for all the different departments with their functions. So if you then would have different products and maybe also different production locations, you would organize them in the production department or in the organizational area which is responsible for the production, and you would then have subordinated areas for the different production locations, like shown in the slide before. So this is kind of function-oriented organization. And then as the second type of the organization, you could also model the process-oriented organization. So this means that you might have different processes which need to be performed for achieving a certain company goal. So maybe for producing a car, there are different processes than for producing trucks. Or for selling cars, there might also be different processes than for selling trucks. So selling trucks might be different because you sell to enterprise customers, and talking to enterprise customers going to fairs, and maybe also the financial issues with enterprise customers are different from the processes when you sell cars to maybe mostly private customers. And then there might be other products as well, for example, e-cars here, motorbikes, mowers, maybe even, or agricultural vehicles. So you might be in an organization producing different vehicles for different purposes, and different customers, different markets also for these products. So in this case, you might recognize that you have different processes for different products, and therewith you would organize your overall organization regarding these processes, regarding the processes for the cars, sales, development, procurement, production. Different from the processes for producing, selling, and procurement for trucks. And e-cars, again, different from motorbikes, different from mowers, and so on. So in this case, you would have a sales organization, for example, in each of these departments: a sales organization for cars, a sales organization for trucks, and so on. And again, with the production organizations for cars, production for trucks, production, and so on. And this then would finally lead to the process-oriented organization, and therewith you concentrate on the different processes within these departments or within these organizational areas. So here in this case, you would care about the criteria, function, or process, which are important for your organizational modeling. And then you might see that if you organize it to the function, or if you organize it regarding the processes, then you might have complications if you want to refer to the other criteria. So for example, you have to have a sales department if you have the process orientation in each of the departments, in each of the process-oriented departments. And this might be a problem, and you might have the idea to combine different criteria, to combine it in a matrix. In a matrix, like you can see here in this example of the company, where you have different department or different department aspects, and you combine them in a matrix to show the interdependencies between the responsibilities. So you would look into the matrix from the left side and from the top. On the left side, you have the software responsibilities, the hardware responsibilities, and the services. So you might be in a system integration company, for example, and software, hardware, and services are the main departments, the main technical departments. And then you would have maybe sales organizations, like here shown on the top, sales for Saxony, sales for the area Berlin. So two different sales areas here, and you might require a combination between these two aspects, sales and technical aspects, to further develop your sales, or seen from the other side, to further develop your products and your services. And this would then lead to a salesperson, because or a sales position, because here it's this rectangle with this line here. And this sales position is responsible for the sales, but not for all sales, only for software sales in the area Saxony. So here at this crossing point of sales, Saxony, and software, you have this position which is responsible for sales of software in Saxony. And the same here, you have the position for sales of hardware in Saxony, and here also for sales of services in Saxony. So 3 different sales positions which are concentrated on 2 aspects of your parameters you have in your organization. Of course, you would choose this kind of organization only if you have so many people that it's worth diverting it in these sales positions. For example, here, sales software in Saxony, sales hardware Saxony, and so on. And it would not make sense if your market is so small, or if you have only a few people in your sales organization, that it doesn't make sense to divide it like that. Only in large organizations it would make sense for this matrix organization. And what could be a problem, of course, is that you might run into conflicts in people management. So for example, here, if you look into this software area, then you have here this position, and you might say, okay, the sales position is here part of the software unit, but on the other side, it's part of the sales unit. So maybe these 2 dependencies on the departments here leads to problems, and you have to keep that in mind, and you somehow have to more clearly define the reporting structure in these cases. So either you decide for the reporting for this position to let them report to the software department if it's more technical oriented, or you should decide to assign this position regarding the reporting to the sales Saxony department. So making a more defined, better defined structure, reporting structure, maybe avoids conflicts in people management for this matrix organization. But nevertheless, matrix organization can benefit from this kind of interdependencies, like the connection to the other kind of departments. And it's not only the type of organization, so the business part, which is depicted in the organizational model, it also has consequences for your information system. So one consequence is that you have, for example, access rights, which are somehow connected to your functions. So only certain job positions, or only certain people which are assigned to these job positions, might have access rights. For example, if you have the people from the engineering departments, then they are allowed to do the engineering, to change the engineering documents, to add engineering documents like sketches, drawings, and so on. And other people from the sales department or from the service department might not be allowed to access these kind of information, or even to change these kind of information. So they have special other areas for their work. So access right to information, access rights to functions is an important aspect when you think about the organizational model and the information system. And then you also have the assignments of costs, so things which you produce with the help of your information systems, like documents, or you have certain products, certain services which are produced and then mapped to your information system, and then you assign the corresponding costs, and this also leads to a mapping to your organizational model. So that you, for example, assign some costs to a certain department, and this department then takes it from its budget. And this also corresponds with your accounting practices which are focused on profit centers. So maybe you have a profit center which concentrates on the production of cars, and you would then look into all functions, the sales, the development, the production, the procurement, and so on, just for the cars department, and then you would do the accounting as a profit center. And then this would also have to be mapped into the information system, because the accounting and all the sub organization needs to be adapted to this kind of profit center thinking. And this organizational model is also important for the data processing. So you somehow refer to your organization within the data processing, and then you need this organizational model to see what happens here with my data in my organization. And the second aspect is the network structure, which might be part of the organization. A network structure who is able to perform, to support all the functionalities of your information system. And this means if you are in large organizations, that you might organize your hardware, your software deployment regarding these departments in your organizational model. So you don't mix departments like production department with the sales department. You also divide the departments regarding their hardware, the network structures. And then correspondingly, you would also divide the requirements for the servers. So there are only servers for sales department, or there are servers for the production department, or for the procurement or development department. So you can divide also the hardware costs and the software costs regarding the organization. This last aspect, actually, the network structure, hardware and software planning regarding the organizational model, is a kind of decreasing in their importance, because in newer models you have quite often software as a service, which is deployed in companies, and this means that you don't care about the concrete software which is installed, you don't care about the concrete hardware which is used, which is deployed, which has to be operated. You just care about the access to certain functionalities, and then you just, for example, have certain plans for renting software, and then you need to divide only regarding these rents. And besides these rents, you have only equally structured networks in all departments with equal possibilities. Just the possibility to access the software as a service which is operated somewhere else.